He emerged from the forest solitary, with matted fur, cracked paws, and eyes that bore witness to too much. No Tad, no owner, just a weary German shepherd limping along a snow-blanketed road. Most cars swerved, most people averted their gaze, but one patrol officer halted, and everything shifted. He neither growled nor begged. He simply stared, then turned, then walked. What he led her to was beyond anyone's expectations. What unfolded next will rekindle your belief, not only in animals, but in the unseen connection that binds us all. Before we dive in, share where you're tuning in from. Drop your city or country in the comments. I'm eager to see how far this rescue tale reaches. If you believe that animals embody more than mere instinct, that they carry purpose, loyalty, and love, hit that subscribe button, for this story, much like Titan himself, will leave an indelible mark on you. The storm descended with an unexpected swiftness, heavy clouds looming low over the mountain reaches of Silver Hollow, a hidden gem nestled deep within the Colorado Rockies. The pine trees stood tall and silent, resembling ancient sentinels. Though it was early November, winter had already tightened its grip on the land, snow blanketing every trail, rooftop, and winding road that meandered along Timberline Pass. Officer Claire Reynolds navigated her patrol SUV through the snow-covered road, windshield wipers battling the thick flurries that obscured her view. At 32, she possessed a presence that compelled others to sit a little straighter. Tall, and with a lean, muscular build honed by years of hiking trails and apprehending suspects, she was a force to be reckoned with. Her auburn hair was neatly tied in a firm braid, and her face, typically calm, bore faint lines between her brows, evidence of a life lived with vigilance since she took up the badge in Silver Hollow after transferring from Boulder PD. Claire had come to appreciate the stillness of the Andersoness, but today it felt different. The dashboard crackled with static before the dispatcher's voice broke through. Nothing on radar, all clear. Claire acknowledged the message and slowed her vehicle near a bend where snow always piled high. That's when she spotted him, a dark shape in the center of the road. It moved differently, not like a deer or elk, but lower and steadier. She pressed the brakes gently, rolling to a halt, squinting through the flurries. It was a dog, a large German shepherd, perhaps 4 or 5 years old. His coat, once regal sable, was now matted with ice and soot. His hind leg limped visibly, and his ribs pressed against his skin like pale bones beneath a wet wool blanket. His deep amber eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that made her heart catch. He didn't bark or flinch. He just stood there, tail still, staring at her as if he had something to say. Claire stepped out slowly, her boots crunching into the snow. "Hey, buddy," she said softly, crouching beside her cruiser. "You all right?" Her hand extended in calm invitation. The dog took one step forward, then another. His gait was purposeful despite the limp. He came right up to her and stopped, his breath puffing in the frozen air. Then just as quietly he turned, walked away, paused, looked back. It was unmistakable. He wanted her to follow. Years of police work had taught Claire that not every call for help came in words. She keyed her radio. "Dispatch Reynolds, sure, I've encountered a lone shepherd near Timberline, injured and tagged, acting intentional. I'm going to follow. We'll report back." She stepped off the road, following the animal's trail through fresh snow. Pines towered on either side like cathedral pillars, and the wind whistled low. The dog, limping but determined, led her 50 yards into the trees before stopping at a small hollow where pine needles lay thick over the ground. Claire knelt when she saw a black, cylindrical device partially covered by frost and leaves. She'd brushed it off. It was an emergency locator beacon, military grade. Its nylon strap was torn, and the ID tag scratched, but legible, property of Cole Anderson. Cole Anderson, the name hit her like a jolt. A local Andersoness instructor and canine rescue trainer, last seen heading into the woods 2 days ago for a solo training exercise with avalanche simulation. He'd been listed as missing after failing to check in. Search and rescue had found no trace until now. She turned to the dog, who now sat quietly beside the pine stump as if waiting for her to put the pieces together. "You were with him," Claire whispered. "You brought this." She made another attempt to connect. Her fingers brushed against his ice-crusted neck. No color. But this dog wasn't wild. His composure, his awareness, the way he had led Harold suggested intense training. Not a stray, but a partner, Claire called it in dispatch. I have positive ID on Cole Anderson's emergency beacon. Coordinates coming now. Subject still missing. I believe his dog found me. A pause. Then the response confirmed Anderson's last GPS ping was near her location. Proceed with caution. The dog looked up again, ears twitching at the radio crackle. Claire stared at him, and for a moment, she saw more than intelligence. She saw intention, quite fierce loyalty that had outlasted fear or fatigue. You've been seeking assistance, haven't you? The wind began to stir, and Claire gestured toward her SUV. Come on, Titan. The name flowed from her lips as effortlessly as breathing. She couldn't explain why, but it felt right, strong, steady, and quiet. The shepherd followed her, limping slightly, pausing just once to look back at the hollow where the beacon had rested, as if to remind her, don't forget where this all began. She opened the back of the SUV. The Titan leapt up without hesitation, curling into a tight circle on the floor mat, emitting a deep, weary sound of a creature that had given everything it had. Claire lingered in the driver's seat, her gaze fixed on the pristine snow blanketing the ground. Just ahead, on the inner strap of the beacon, barely discernible beneath a delicate layer of ice, were words etched with a knife. For Titan. Have faith in him. She gazed at the message before restarting the engine. All right, Titan, she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Let's track down your human. And in that instant, she realized this wasn't merely a rescue call, it marked the onset of something far grander. The cold penetrated deeper, as the flurries intensified, enveloping the woods of Silver Hollow in a veil of swirling white. Claire Reynolds stood beside her patrol SUV. The emergency beacon nestled in her gloved hands. The engraving property of Cole Anderson shimmered softly beneath the dome light. Her breath formed quick clouds as she gazed down at Titan. The sable-coated German shepherd sat at her feet, calm yet impossibly alert. Claire's pulse quickened. This wasn't just a lost dog with a buried tooth. This was a signal, a message, a call. She opened her radio and called dispatch. Claire Reynolds requesting immediate coordination with mountain search and rescue. I have an active beacon for a possible missing hiker named Cole Anderson. Coordinates to follow. Also, I've got a dog on site that looks trained. I think he's trying to lead me. Minutes later, headlights pierced the swirling snowfall as a large dark gray van came to a stop behind her SUV. Two figures emerged. One was Cole Dawes, a seasoned search and rescue technician, stocky and robust like a bear, his thick beard already crusted with snow. The other was Hannah Anderson. Hannah was in her late 20s, tall and slender, with straight black hair tucked beneath a fleece beanie. Her pale skin almost mirrored the snow around her, while her brown eyes held an intense and weary gaze. She donned a red rescue jacket over gray thermals and hiking pants, having not been on a field deployment in months. As she paused, she noticed the dog Titan turning toward her, its head tilted and amber eyes locked onto her face. June's breath caught. That posture, the twitch of the ears. Claire glanced over. Do you recognize him? Hannah shook her head slowly. No, but he moves exactly like Jasper used Tommy little brother's dog. Jasper died in an avalanche 3 years ago. I haven't worked a rescue since. Claire looked at her gently. Then maybe it's time you start again. Cole positioned his laptop on the van's hood as Claire handed him the beacon. Battery's low, he murmured, fingers flying over the keys. The last ping was within the past 24 hours. Whoever activated this wasn't merely passing through. Hannah crouched beside Titan, who didn't flinch. He sniffed her glove, then turned and walked back toward the trees. He wants us to follow, Claire remarked. Cole let out a deep sigh. Are you certain he's not merely pursuing rabbits? But Claire was already on the move. I have faith in him. Let's proceed. They prepared quickly, donning crampons and thermal packs. Urgent sled. Claire remained at the front with Titan, who who trotted just ahead, never straying too far and frequently glancing back to ensure they were following. The trail grew narrower, flanked by towering pines whose limbs sagged under the weight of fresh snow. No signs of blood or disturbance, Cole murmured. It's eerie. He's not just leading us anywhere, he's tracking something. Following 20 minutes of quiet and elevation, Titan paused, sniffing the ground as he circled and pawed at a drift. Claire assisted in digging beneath a thin layer of snow, and together they uncovered a frayed, torn nylon strap, half buried. It was the same kind of strap used in the training units, Hannah whispered, brushing off the snow. Then she froze. This color, it's the one they gave Cole, my brother. Cole fell silent as Claire crouched down, clearing away more snow. There at waist other end of the strap linked to a broken climbing harness. Hannah grasped the strap tightly, as if it could disappear at any moment. He had been here, he had fallen, and Titan had found him. The realization struck like a bolt of lightning. Titan hadn't just stumbled upon the beacon, he had remained with it, protected it, waited for someone to arrive. Claire gazed at the dog with a fresh sense of wonder, his fur dusted with frost, his gaze unwavering. You didn't lose your way, did you? You stayed, you waited. They established a perimeter and called for a drone team to scan the nearby ridges. Titan circled the area once more, then settled down beside the broken harness, as if keeping watch. In the brief pause, Hannah stepped closer too. Claire, he reminds me so much of Jasper. It aches. I didn't think I'd experience that feeling again, but there's something in his eyes. Purpose, loyalty. Claire nodded. I thought the same when I first saw him. He blocked my car as if he were trying to talk. Now I believe he's still on duty, just waiting for us to catch up. Cole looked up from his screen. Got it? There's a recent entry in the registry. Titan, a German Shepherd, trained by handler Cole Anderson at Rocky Mountain Search and Rescue Station 9, was declared missing 2 winters ago and is presumed dead. June's mouth parted slightly, her gloved hand covering it. He survived all this time, and he stayed. Claire crouched beside Titan, running a hand gently down his back. You never stopped working, did you, boy? You never gave up. In that moment, the wind died down, and snow drifted like feathers around them. For the first time in months, Hannah knelt beside the dog and smiled. He nudged her hand, and she let him. The wind had shifted. It no longer howled but whispered low, almost mournful, as Claire, Tyler, and Titan ventured further into the ridge, where the pines grew closer together. The snow thickened, and the ground became increasingly uneven, entwined with roots and hidden stones. Titan's pace quickened, becoming more deliberate. His snout stayed low to the ground, tail rigid, pausing intermittently to catch scents in the air. Claire trailed closely behind, her boots crunching on frost-covered needles, rifle and radio clipped to her jacket, the latter hissing with static from somewhere behind. Tyler scanned the slope with his weather binoculars, one glove removed to better manage the map he had retrieved earlier. They were 3 miles into Echo Run, their packs heavier than anticipated. The last ping from Cole's locator had faded once more, swallowed by the dense canopies and snowfall. But Claire had come to trust the dog's instincts over any device. Titan slowed near a sharp outcrop where the earth dipped suddenly. Claire moved beside him and crouched. The slope ahead was jagged and treacherous, crusted with snow that looked soft but hid uneven terrain. There, near the edge, she saw it, 2 long slide marks, faint but unmistakable, streaking diagonally down the ridge wall. Her breath caught. Tyler, she called without turning, we've got tracks. Tyler marched up next to her, his brow furrowed as he fiddled with his binoculars. Leaning in closer, he remarked, it seems like someone took a tumble, or perhaps attempted to descend, and lost their footing. It's tough to discern with all this snow. Titan emitted a single, low bark that shattered the silence. He pawed at the edge, ears pinned back, muscles tense. Claire reached for her radio. Base, this is Officer Reynolds. We've discovered what appears to be a decent trail, possibly a fall. Uploading coordinates now. Requesting rescue crew standby and medevac support if we confirm human presence. As she spoke, Titan abruptly turned and dashed down the slope, not following the slide marks directly but veering left toward a narrow, barely discernible path that wound ahead. Through the rocks, Abby's heart leapt into her throat. "Titan," she yelled, already scrambling after him. Tyler trailed behind, moving at a deliberate pace. "Are you certain he's not following a scent?" he asked. "I'm sure," Claire snapped. "He's in the lead again." The side trail presented a challenge, concealed beneath a misleading layer of soft snow. Claire slipped once, managing to steady herself against a pine root. The sounds of distant barks echoed through the canyon's curve, each one growing more insistent. A sharp bend revealed a narrow ravine, bordered by jagged boulders and ancient trees that leaned in closely. There, wedged between root and stone, lay a torn survival pack, half buried, its contents scattered and frozen into the earth. Claire knelt down, pulled it free, and brushed the ice from its flap. A name stitched in faded black read Anderson. Nearby, a foil emergency blanket fluttered in the breeze, caught against a fallen branch. Claire surveyed the area. No body, no footprints leading further, yet then Tyler pointed. There, 10 feet away, was a water-stained trail map, folded awkwardly and pinned beneath a flat stone. Claire lifted it gently. In the margin was a note, scribbled hastily in red marker. "Cabin knee slope shelter," and beneath that, a drawn arrow pointing toward a barely marked-off trail path. Claire whispered. He was heading toward shelter. Tyler exhaled slowly. If he made it that far. Titan barked again, tail high, pointing east, toward the thicker trees beyond the ravine. Just then a voice called faintly from behind them, soft, breathless, and entirely unexpected. "Wait, please wait." Claire turned sharply. Emerging from behind a pine tree was June, panting, cheeks flushed from cold and effort. Her navy beanie had half slipped from her head, and she clutched a small medkit strapped across her shoulder. Snow clung to her jeans and boots, and her gloves were mismatched, clearly thrown on in a rush. Claire's face darkened. "June, what on earth are you doing here?" "I tracked you from the ridge line," she said, gasping for air. "I know I wasn't meant to come, but if you find him hurt, I can assist." Claire walked forward, her jaw clenched. "You understand how perilous this terrain is?" "I do," Hannah replied, her voice now steady. "But I also know I've navigated this before." Field response, CPR, stabilization. "I might have left school, but I haven't forgotten everything. Let me stay." Tyler gave Claire a subtle nod. "It could be wise, Claire. If he's injured, we'll need help." Claire glanced at Hannah once more. Beneath her calm exterior lay a mix of fear and a determination that Claire had never witnessed in her before. "Fine," she said. "You stay within line of sight and follow orders." Hannah nodded, stepping beside Tyler as Titan circled them, once then took off again deeper farther east, toward the trail hinted. In Cola's scribbled note they followed for another 20 minutes in silence. The snow thickened, but Titan pressed on. Claire found herself watching Hannah, the younger woman, move with purpose. Though her boots slipped occasionally, there was a sadness about her, quiet and deep, that made sense now. A loss not yet healed, perhaps not meant to be, yet here she was, trudging through a snow-covered Andersoness to help a stranger ahead. The pines began to thin, the slope flattened, and in the distance, hidden among the branches like a secret, they saw a dark, weather-worn structure nearly swallowed by the forest. A cabin, just as the map had said. Claire raised her radio base. "We may have located shelter site indicated in note. Approach with caution. Wheel report status inside." Titan reached the cabin first, stopped at the door, and pawed once, then sat waiting. Claire stepped forward, hand on the handle, her breath fogged in the still air, and just before she'd pushed the door open, she whispered more to herself than anyone else, "Please be in there, Cole. Please be alive." The cabin looked like it had been forgotten by time, tilted slightly to one side, its roof sagging under the weight of years and recent snow. Wooden boards bleached gray by mountain wind. Ivy had long since died back, but the claw marks of past seasons still clung to the walls. Claire stood a few feet from the entrance, breathing slowly, her hand resting on the door frame. Her other hand held her radio steady against her jacket, though she hadn't keyed it yet. Tyler stood to her right, one hand at his belt, the other scanning the tree line. Titan, still and silent, sat directly in front of the door, not barking, not pacing, just watching it like a soldier standing guard behind them. Hannah remained tucked behind a pine out of view. Snow had gathered along her coat and tangled in her hair, but she didn't seem to notice. Her eyes were fixed on Titan. The wind shifted and she pressed closer to the tree, heart pounding. Claire finally pushed the door open with a long wooden creak. The air that escaped was sharp with mold, damp wood, and something older, sweat, perhaps pain. The room was dark, lit only by the pale blue reflection from the snow outside. Claire stepped in cautiously, her boots brushing across a warped floorboard. Then she saw him in the far left corner of the single-room cabin. Curled awkwardly beneath a fraying military suit blanket lay a man. His clothes were dirty, shredded in places. His face was pale, lips dry and cracked. One leg was obviously injured, twisted slightly inward beneath him, swollen and wrapped with a makeshift splint of bark and rope. A tin water bottle lay overturned beside him, empty, and sitting directly next to his shoulder. So still he blended with the Titans was Titan. The dog turned toward Claire, but made no sound. Just looked, then turned back as if saying, "You found him, now help you." Claire hurried across the room, dropping to her knees as she pressed two fingers to the man's neck, feeling a weak pulse and shallow breath. She reached for her radio, saying, "Base, this is Reynolds. I've located. Cole Anderson is alive but unconscious. He is suspected to be dehydrated and possibly suffering from hypothermia, with a compound fracture to his right leg. Sending coordinates for an airlift immediately." Tyler entered, crouching by the door, his eyes darting around the corners of the cabin. "This place lacks insulation, no fire to warm it. It's astonishing that he's still here." Claire looked up at Titan. "It's not a miracle," she said. "It's him." Titan stayed where he was, his gaze locked on his human. His fur was wet and soiled, and his tail barely flicked. He hadn't left Cole's side even once. Outside, Hannah inched closer to the door, compelled by the silence. She didn't step inside, but remained just far enough to catch sight of the figure in the corner. Something within her chest fractured as the dog leaned against Cole's shoulder, steadfast and unwavering through the tempest and deprivation. It shattered something cold inside her. She pressed her hand against the doorframe, her breath forming mist, then retreated into the Titans. She felt she couldn't intrude. This moment wasn't hers to claim. Yet, for the first time in months, her eyes shimmered not with anguish, but with a quiet, aching hope. Tyler moved to assess Cole's leg while Claire opened her medical pouch, tearing into thermal blankets and heat packs. "He's been like this for at least a day, maybe more," she said. The splints were crude but functional. They must have been fashioned when he could still move. "Water's gone." Tyler mentioned that he was drinking, but not sufficiently, especially if the dog hadn't sought assistance. Claire nodded in silence as Titan finally stood, stretching slowly before making his way to the door. He glanced back at Cole once, then nudged the door open with his nose. Snow swirled and carried by the wind, and in the distance, they heard a low thrum of an approaching rotor. Claire keyed her radio once more. "Rescue choppers are inbound, ETA 5 minutes. We need to stabilize him for the lift." Tyler pulled an emergency marker from his jacket and stepped outside to signal. Claire continued monitoring Cole's vitals, brushing the dirt from his cheek. "Hey," she whispered, "you did good. He brought us." Cole remained still, his breathing calming just a fraction as Titan returned to his position 20 yards away. Hannah observed through the cracked window, her fingers tightening around the strap of her med bag. She longed to step forward, to be part of it, but understood this moment wasn't about her. Yet, for the first time in 2 years, she felt no urge to flee. Instead, she felt a sense of belonging, as if healing might be within reach. The chopper arrived, bringing a rush of wind and noise as EMTs in red and black suits descended by cable. Claire briefed them swiftly while Titan remained unmoved. One of the medics, a young woman with dark-skinned cornrow braids tucked beneath her helmet, approached cautiously to adjust Cole's weight. "He yours?" she inquired, to which Claire shook her head, replying, "He's his." The medic offered a subtle smile, saying, "He has the eyes of a soldier." In mere moments, Cole found himself secured in a rescue basket, lifted through the trees and into the awaiting helicopter. The final image etched in his mind before the door closed was Titan's silhouette framed against the snow. The dog remained silent, simply observing. His task, for the time being, was accomplished. Claire approached and knelt next to Titan. "You're coming with us, all right? You've earned that much," she said, glancing back at the others. Hannah emerged from the trees, finally locking eyes with Ibby. Claire nodded once, neither in approval nor in judgment, but in a quiet understanding. "You saw it?" Claire inquired, while June's voice faltered. "Yeah." She gazed at Titan, who was now sprawled in the snowy expanse, his tail flicking once against the backdrop of the sky. "Do you think he understood what he was doing?" Hannah murmured as Claire nodded. "I don't believe he ever ceased to understand." And with that, the forest fell quiet once more. But it was not the same kind of silence as before. This one resonated with an undercurrent of vitality. 3 days after the rescue, the storm that had enveloped Silver Hollow finally subsided. The sky opened up in soft gradients of blue, casting a rare warmth over the mountain town. Inside the modest brick building of the Silver Hollow Animal Rehabilitation Center, sunlight filtered through frosted windows, bringing warmth to the space. On the tiled floor, Titan lay curled, his head resting gently on his paws, eyes half-lidded yet alert. The center was overseen by Dr. Meredith Cole, a lean woman in her early 50s with sharply cut salt and pepper hair, a perpetually crisp lab coat, and a face that seldom revealed emotion. Years in animal trauma response had honed her ability to remain composed, particularly around injured animals and anxious owners. She moved with precision and spoke succinctly to Meredith. Healing was both an art and a discipline, yet Titan tested her sense of detachment, refusing food until you entered the room. Earlier that morning, she had confided in Claire while observing through the window as Titan nestled into Claire's coat sleeve. "He's not just waiting, he's assessing." "That's not typical behavior," she noted. Claire, still in uniform and visibly fatigued, leaned against the wall of the holding area. "He's more than common." Titan had been cleaned, treated for frostbite, and rehydrated, yet he remained quiet, almost solemn, as if conserving his energy not just for physical recovery, but for something deeper. His eyes tracked every movement with surgical precision. No panic, no fear, just unwavering focus. In the next room, Cole Anderson found himself in a medical bay designated for humans, a temporary setup created for emergencies in partnership with the local clinic. His leg was now encased in a proper cast, for fluids flowing steadily beside him. His beard had grown longer, graying at the edges, and his eyes, once dulled by dehydration, had regained the sharpness of someone accustomed to sensing danger before it struck. Claire entered his room, holding a mug of hospital-grade coffee. "Great news, your dog has become somewhat of a legend." Cole offered a faint smile. "To me he already was." She handed him the cup. "There's been some discussion. Some believe he should be reassigned to search and rescue, while others suggest he should go back to his old unit." Cole shook his head. "He won't work for them again, not with their training methods. He was never meant to simply locate bodies in the snow. Titan is different. He has always been different." Claire leaned in to explain that. Cole's voice softened. "He was trained for trauma response, not just in terrain but also in emotional proximity. We used to visit group homes, veteran wards, and children's trauma centers. Titan could walk into a room and just understand who sought his presence. It wasn't about commands, it was instinct." Claire frowned. "That's not in his file? I didn't submit it." "His profile was stripped when I left the program. He wasn't responding to the aggressive protocols, but he responded to people." Meanwhile, in the adjacent hallway, Hannah stood outside Titan's room, having arrived that morning with a fresh scarf, a book tucked under her arm, and a small thermos of chamomile broth she insisted dogs preferred to water on colder days. Her boots were damp, cheeks pink from the wind, but there was a light in her expression that hadn't been there weeks before. She came every morning, quiet, never intrusive, just present. "Doctor." Meredith glanced at her clipboard. "He doesn't eat unless you're near. Seems you've become his second titan." Hannah offered a gentle smile. "I don't mind. I think we're both learning how to be present. You're not here just for him, are you?" Meredith inquired, her tone devoid of any malice. Hannah paused, considering. "My brother. He had a shepherd named Bruno who was lost in an avalanche 2 years ago. I never got to say goodbye, never even saw the body. We just received his pack and collar in the mail. I halted everything after that friend's life, but when I saw Titan that first day, it felt like Bruno was looking back at me, not in form, but in the way he waited." Meredith gave a rare nod. "Certain creatures hold onto reverberations." Hannah stepped into the room. Titan looked up, ears twitching, and lifted his head. Hannah sat cross-legged beside him, pouring a few spoonfuls of the warm broth into his bowl. He didn't lap it right away. Instead, he leaned forward, pressing his nose into her palm. She didn't pull back. "I miss you, Will," she whispered. "But perhaps it's time for me to thaw," Claire observed from the window, hidden from view, as her thoughts whirled with possibilities. Technically, Titan still belonged to the state, at least until a full report was filed and a decision made. However, something in her gut told her that the answer wasn't just paperwork. It was already playing out in front of her. Later that day, a formal debate unfolded in the conference room of the center. With Claire present, Dr. Meredith Cole sat upright in his wheelchair, while a representative from Mountain Operations, Colin Rusk, stood nearby. Colin was a tall man in his mid-30s, with a sharp jawline, polished boots, and a clipboard firmly in hand. He communicated in concise sentences, laden with policy details and numerical data. Titan's tracking performance surpasses that of most Tier 2 canines. With the right recalibration, he could be back on active duty in just 6 weeks. Colin remarked that Cole's voice pierced through, warning, "You'll break him. He was made for the field." Colin replied with a firm no, while Cole asserted, "He was selected for something different, and he has already demonstrated what that is." "Doctor." Meredith tapped her pen once. "I propose a third option. Community care. The dog remains here under therapeutic protocol. Voluntary exposure to trauma survivors fosters bond building, not a command response. It's already occurring. You just need to stop labeling it as accidental." Colin frowned. "That's not acceptable." Claire finally spoke, but neither what he did nor Standard managed to pull Cole from that cabin's Titan. Silence enveloped the room, and then Colin noted something on his clipboard, muttering, "I'll file a deviation report. It'll take a few weeks." As the meeting concluded, Hannah made her way back to the recovery room, oblivious to the choice she was softly reciting from the book she had brought, poems and stories woven with themes of light, snow, and the essence of waiting. Titan lay beside her, his head resting on her knee, and when she halted mid-sentence, he emitted a soft huff, as if encouraging her to continue. And so she did. The morning was unusually clear for Silver Hollow. Crisp mountain air carried the scent of thawing pine bark, and patches of snow had begun to melt, forming tiny rivulets that traced down the hill behind the Community Rehabilitation Center. Claire stood just outside the west gate, watching as two paths unfolded before her, one leading into the forest trail, where hikers often disappeared for hours, and the other down a gravel path to the small open courtyard that had recently been converted into an accessible play space for children with disabilities. Today's field test deviated from standard protocols, yet nothing about Titan had adhered to protocol from the beginning. A small group had assembled to observe, including Lori Kimmel, a pediatric occupational therapist in her late 30s. She was petite, with dark curly hair tucked beneath a knit beret and large, expressive brown eyes. Lori dedicated the past 10 years to working with children who experience sensory processing disorders. Her presence today was a blend of professionalism and heartfelt connection. Her very own child at 9 years old, Liam was one of the children in the courtyard, skillfully maneuvering along a balance beam, the sound of his braces softly clicking against the padded ground. Inside the holding room, Titan sat quietly on his haunches, ears perked slightly forward, his body relaxed yet alert. His fur had regained much of its shine, thanks to daily grooming by Hannah and the volunteers. A new green collar, recently issued by the center, now adorned his neck, with a tag shaped like a pine tree engraved with the single word, Titan. Claire entered the room with a leash in hand but chose not to use it. She crouched beside him, saying, "Okay, big guy, no orders today. You choose." She opened the gate, and Titan stepped out slowly, his tail low but not tucked, his nose twitching toward the breeze ahead. The path split, left toward the woods, open and familiar, and right toward laughter, wheelchairs, textured mats, and the clamor of children. He paused at the divide, the observers leaning forward. Titan turned his head to the forest first, inhaling deeply with a slow draw through his nose. Then he pivoted and, without hesitation, walked toward the courtyard, neither rushed nor uncertain, just certain. Laurie's hand flew to her mouth, while Liam, who had been stacking rubber blocks, stopped and looked up as Titan approached. The boy didn't flinch, and neither did the dog. They simply regarded one another, two quiet souls sizing up a shared silence. Titan approached the mat next to the boy, turned in a deliberate circle, and settled down, resting his head between his paws, his body perfectly still. Liam extended his hand, brushing against the dog's ear with a soft touch. Titan remained motionless, and the courtyard fell into a hushed silence. Laurie let out a shaky breath as he made his choice. Abby's voice resonated, low and proud, affirming his presence within the building. Hannah observed from the hallway window. Earlier, she had been busy arranging the markers for the test, but now she found herself alone, a binder filled with course registration forms clutched in her hand. She wore a hoodie, the name of her former veterinary college faintly visible across the front, a garment she hadn't donned in years. In the front pocket, a well-worn photograph of her and her younger brother rested, capturing a moment at the base of the Copperhead Trail, both of them laughing, both covered in dirt and dog hair. She remained unaware. Dr. Meredith Cole approached until she heard her voice. "You filled it out?" Hannah turned. "Yeah, I'm going back spring semester. Just part-time for now." Meredith nodded. "You'll finish?" "I hope so," Hannah said softly. I think I finally want to." They watched together as Liam now leaned against Titan's side, a quiet trust forming in real time. The other children slowly approached one by one. Titan didn't flinch. He shifted slightly to accommodate space. A girl in a pink wheelchair brushed his back with cautious fingers. Titan flicked his ears, then laid his chin flat against the mat. Content present. Later that afternoon, Claire called a town council meeting, something she hadn't done in months. The usual community leaders gathered in the rec center sense meeting room, folding chairs in semicircle, stale coffee, the hum of a flickering ceiling light. Claire stood in front with a modest whiteboard and a folder labeled the Titan Project. "I'm not here to ask for approval," she began. "I'm here to ask for participation." She laid out a vision, a permanent program operated under the Silver Hollow Animal Rehabilitation Center, pairing trauma-trained dogs like Titan with local children recovering from grief, injury, or psychological distress. The concept wasn't unprecedented on a national scale, yet it had never been attempted in such a small mountain town, especially not with a dog like this. Titan didn't merely endure. Claire remarked that he made a conscious choice to come back, to seek out the people in the crowd. Ed Ramsey, a seasoned Vietnam veteran with a cane and eyes that held untold stories, cleared his throat. He allowed the dog to remain, permitting the children to keep him. Applause erupted, soft yet heartfelt. By the following week, Laurie had consented to take on the role of therapeutic coordinator, while Hannah would lend her support on weekends and pursue her studies remotely. Cole, still on the mend yet gaining strength with each passing day, volunteered to make regular visits as part of the program's mentor circle. It was a dry Tuesday afternoon with sunlight streaming through the fir branches. while a group of children played softly on the padded mats. Claire stepped outside with a clipboard in hand. She spotted Hannah sitting on the ground, legs crossed, with Titan curled beside her, his head resting in her lap. Liam leaned against his side, humming softly to himself. Claire approached. "Hey, want to help design the program logo?" Hannah smiled. "Only if Titan approves the font." Titan huffed gently, not quite a bark, more a reply. They all laughed, and from that moment on, it was never about rescuing a dog. It was about following one. The gymnasium at Silver Hollow Middle School had never seen this many people since the Blizzard Dance of '09. Folding chairs stood neatly in rows, while strings of white fairy lights crisscrossed above, casting a warm glow. Tables were adorned with handmade decorations, each piece telling its own story. Pine cones, intricately carved wood plaques, and charming paw print centerpieces. Young ones in cozy winter hats balanced trays of cookies. Regional creators showcased watercolors inspired by animals. It wasn't a formal gala, yet it brimmed with warmth, laughter, and a shared sense of purpose. The whole town had gathered for a singular mission: to aid in the construction of the Titan Path. A new wing at the Animal Rehab Center is dedicated to therapeutic animal support. Titan stood near the front, resting on a soft flannel blanket, a green therapy vest perfectly sized over his shoulders. He was tenser than usual, his ears swiveling with the sounds of chatter and clinking glasses, but he remained calm as children passed by. He dipped his head slightly, acknowledging them without intimidation, his eyes constantly scanning the crowd, always checking, always ready at the podium near the basketball hoop. Claire Reynolds adjusted the microphone she wore, her uniform still intact though the badge had been set aside for the evening. Instead, a simple silver pine brooch adorned her chest. She cleared her throat, and the room fell silent. "Some of you know me as the officer who pulled over your pickup for expired plates," she began, eliciting a ripple of laughter. "But I'm also the one who encountered the dog in the middle of a snowstorm, a dog who didn't run, didn't growl. He simply stared through my windshield and waited." She paused, her voice softening. "I thought I was going to help him. Turns out he was leading me. That choice his choice set off a chain reaction none of us expected." She gestured toward Titan, who now sat beside Hannah Bennett near the edge of the makeshift stage. The young woman looked different tonight, wearing a navy cardigan over a vintage blouse, her hair pulled into a braid that wrapped around her head like a crown. Her eyes were still soft, but they no longer carried the heaviness they once did. "Tonight," Claire continued, "we're not just raising money for a building, we're recognizing something bigger: bridge between those who carry invisible wounds and those who heal without words. Titan showed us that, and now we want to make that path permanent for kids, for veterans, for anyone who's lost their voice." When she stepped down, applause rose like a swell. People whistled. Titan tilted his head and gave a low, pleasant huff. He leaned against June, who scratched behind his ear with a grin that was no longer hesitant. Later in the evening, Hannah took the stage. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the clicker for the projector, which now displayed images behind her, a slideshow of the last few months. Titan lying beside children, Hannah helping a girl braid ribbons into his vest, Cole sitting in a circle with Teen Titan at his feet. "We're calling it the Titan Path," she said, "but it's not just his story. It's yours, it's mine. It's about choosing healing when you could choose to run. It's about meeting pain with presence." Then she told a story that silenced the room. "Last week," she said, "a little girl came to the center. Her name is Tessa. She's 7, and she hasn't spoken since witnessing a car crash that took her father's life. Her mother, Rachel, brings her to our sessions, hoping, waiting." Hannah advanced to the next slide. An image captures a young girl in a purple hoodie, seated cross-legged. Titan lay beside her, his nose tucked under her arm. She rarely made eye contact, yet Titan rested beside her without expectation. Yesterday, during one of our quiet sessions, he gently placed his paw on her leg. Tessa looked at him, really looked at him, and whispered a single word. She paused. "Dog." A collective inhale rippled through the gin. She hadn't spoken in nearly 2 years. The room fell silent for several long seconds before applause erupted, not in excitement, but in something closer to awe. At the back of the gin, Rachel Davis, Tessa's mother, stood quietly, a cup of tea cradled in her hands. In her late 30s, she was tall and willowy, her tired eyes softened by kindness. Dressed simply in jeans and a sweater, her presence radiated warmth. Tessa stood beside her, clutching a small plush shepherd dog gifted to her. Her eyes were wide yet calm, and when she spotted Titan, she offered a tiny wave. Titan perked up immediately, his tail tapping against the floor. That moment conveyed everything words could not. Later, the auction commenced, featuring hand-carved doghouses, local paintings, and homemade quilts. Claire donated her patrol boots signed with a note that read, "Retired after chasing one very persistent shepherd." They sold for $500. Cole took the mic, leaning briefly against his cane. He had shaved for the first time in weeks and donned a dark jacket that felt overly formal for him. "I trained Titan to locate people, but I never taught him to guide them back to their true selves. He accomplished that on his own." When the final tally was announced, the total raised exceeded expectations, more than double what they had hoped for. Now to break ground, enough to hire a second handler, enough to dream as people streamed out into the chilly night. Titan lay on his blanket, his tail moving slowly and steadily as his gaze lingered on each passerby. He didn't appear tired, just profoundly aware. Claire knelt beside him, saying, "You did good, partner." Hannah approached, her eyes glistening yet filled with a smile. "He's not merely assisting people in finding their voices again," she murmured. "He's helping me regain my faith." As the last chairs were folded and the lights dimmed, Titan remained seated, his silhouette calm against the backdrop of the snowfall outside the window. He was not a dog waiting for commands, but a soul who had chosen his path and was watching it grow. The air was crisp that morning, the kind of cold that carried clarity. Snow still clung to the outer edges of the valley, but spring had officially touched Silver Hollow. The town's heartbeat slowed here, more intentional, where pine trees whispered in unison and the mountains formed a natural embrace around the new structure that stood proud and complete, the Titan Path Center for Animal-Assisted Healing. It had taken months of fundraising, town votes, volunteer labor, and long nights, but today the building was real. White glass windows overlooking forest trails, warm cedar siding, and a soft mural stretching across the main lobby. A painting depicts a German shepherd curled beneath a tree, eyes both alert and peaceful. Beside him, the child's hand rests lightly on his fur. Titan stands in front of the building, adorned in his freshly washed green vest. His coat gleams honey brown in the morning sun, and his tail gives a soft, rhythmic thump against the welcome mat. A band of blue ribbon hung between two wooden posts beside him, fluttering slightly in the breeze. The moment was ceremonial, yes, but more than that, it was sacred. To his right stood Cole Anderson, walked without a cane, though a faint limp lingered. He wore a gray jacket over a simple shirt, his beard neatly trimmed, and his eyes held a soft, wise weariness. Next to him stood Hannah Bennett, holding a pair of ceremonial scissors, her eyes shining brighter than they had in years. She proudly donned her veterinary college sweatshirt, sleeves rolled to the elbow, her hair tied back in a soft ponytail. Beside her, tall and composed, was Officer Claire Reynolds, no longer just a patrol officer, but the informal heart of the entire project. A small crowd had gathered: parents, teachers, council members, volunteers, and children, some in wheelchairs, others shyly clutching stuffed animals, a few already sprawled out on therapy mats inside. Among them stood Tessa, now 8, clutching her worn plush shepherd, her face calm, her mother nearby. Rachel observed, her eyes glistening with moisture yet brimming with pride. Cole cleared his throat, his voice soft yet resolute. "This structure serves not merely as a tribute, but as a testament. A year ago, I faced death in solitude, and today, I find myself enveloped by others, all thanks to a dog who chose to act on instinct rather than commands." Hannah stepped forward, scissors in hand. "This isn't the conclusion of a tale," she remarked. "It's the dawn of countless others." Titan didn't merely assist people in enduring. He reignited their desire to truly live once more. Claire added a sentence that resonated through the pine-covered clearing. "He didn't just find his way home, he brought us home too." The scissors closed with a soft click, the ribbon fell, and cheers rose. But not loudly, no roaring applause, just something warm and real, like the exhale of a town that had remembered its humanity. Titan remained still until Tessa took a step forward. She moved slowly, her hands clenched tightly at her sides, then gradually relaxed them, one finger at a time. When she reached Titan, she knelt without hesitation and placed her hand gently on his head. "Guardian," she whispered, marking only the third word anyone had heard her utter. Titan leaned into her palm. Inside the building, the first therapy session had already begun, the main room adorned with soft lighting and textured surfaces, cozy reading nooks, soothing sound machines, and little spaces adorned with blankets for animals to rest beside those in need. Each corner featured a nameplate crafted from brushwood: Courage Corner, Whisper Hall, and the Echo Room. Near the entrance, a beautifully carved stone plaque nestled among pine branches, and wild lavender bore the inscription: "He didn't just find his way home, he brought us home too." Behind the building, a serene walking path wound its way into the trees, a brief trail adorned with wind chimes, engraved stones, and the handprints of children. It concluded at a quaint bench nestled beneath a towering pine tree, the very kind that invites reflection. Titan had once paused during the search for coal. Claire and Hannah walked that trail together in the afternoon, Titan padding softly beside them. They didn't speak much, there was nothing to add. The silence here was different than before. It wasn't isolation but peace. When they reached the bench, Cole sat first. Hannah stood with one hand on the tree bark, and Claire crouched, picking up a small pine cone and rolling it between her fingers. Titan sat a few feet away, facing the forest. He didn't watch them. He stared forward, eyes fixed on the distant ridge where snow still lingered, where the wind always moved. But this time, there was no urgency in him, only presence, a quiet understanding, not of duty but of belonging. Sometimes miracles don't roar from mountain tops or flash like lightning in the sky. Sometimes they come on quiet paws with amber eyes and steady hearts. Titan was more than just a dog. He embodied a profound grace, arriving precisely when needed, among those who could appreciate his mission, one that only he seemed to comprehend. Perhaps this reflects a deeper truth about how the universe operates, not always with grand gestures or booming proclamations, but through quiet presence, unwavering loyalty, and the silent guardians who accompany us in our moments of confusion, guiding us back to our true selves. In our lives, we often find ourselves yearning for dramatic signs or loud affirmations, yet healing may manifest in the form of a second chance, a simple act of kindness, or the gentle companionship of someone who remains steadfast. If Titan imparted any lesson, it is this: love does not require words to resonate, and purpose does not always demand explicit direction. So, wherever you find yourself today, whatever burdens you bear, remember this: you are not alone, and you might just be someone else's miracle, even without realizing it. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who could use a bit of hope. We invite you to leave a comment and share your thoughts on second chances. If you believe that there are still mysterious and beautiful workings in the world, join us in expressing that by commenting amen below. Don't forget to subscribe for more true stories of healing, hope, and the unspoken connections that transform lives. May blessings be upon each of you, no matter where you are.